Hello, welcome to my February and March reads. I'm sorry that I didn't post anything last month. These past 2 months were not good reading months for me. I read a total of 8 books that I can talk to you about. I read more books for work, but I can't talk about them. Let's talk about what I read. In February, I decided to do Literary It Girl reading month. As I told you, I'm doing these reading projects for each month. So far, I am enjoying this process. I find interesting to put together the TBR to understand which genre or which group category of books I'm reading. For February, the reading topic was Literary It Girls because I've seen a lot of them on TikTok and on YouTube, and I've seen a few essays about literary it girls and what do they read and what does this imply for the publishing industry. So I decided on a few books, some of them that I was interested in already and some of them that I just saw the cover a lot on TikTok and on Instagram. The first one was an ebook, Sophie Cauley's Take Care of Yourself. This is a book that is a companion to Sophie Cauley's art exhibition that she put out with the same name. And for this reason, I decided not to rate this book because I don't think I got the full experience reading the book instead of going to the exhibition, and reading the ebook instead of reading the physical book. This book is a collective of works from different women regarding the same exact email. She was broken up with through email, and she gave this email to 107 women, and all of them had to interpret the email from their point of view. So we have lawyers, we have judges, we have writers, we have actresses and musicians. All of them came up with a piece of work that related in some way, related in some way to the email, to the breakup email. I think this as an art exhibition would have been absolutely beautiful, like seeing all of the responses. Some of them are in paper form, some of them are music, some of them are films, some of them are little short clips. So seeing all of that in a single room would have been amazing. And the book in itself is an interesting endeavor. I find that these art style books, I gravitate towards them, but I never read them. Like, I find them pretty, but I don't find them interesting enough to consume. But the problem with the ebook is that the physical book has letters and tidbits inside the book, and the ebook doesn't have that. So when you get to the part with the musicians and the actresses, in the physical book form, you have envelopes with DVDs that you can use to see what the piece of art that this person has created. Without these, you have only like half of the book, basically, the physical book, original physical book. So the ebook wasn't the best choice. I don't think it should have even been made, to be honest. And at my place of work, we don't do ebooks for every single title. We only do ebooks for titles that make sense to have an ebook, mainly literature. But for example, children's literature, if it's only a picture book, we don't do ebooks for those. So yeah, I don't think this should have been an ebook to begin with. And I don't feel right rating this because I don't feel like I had the full experience that the book and the exhibition wanted to portray. But considering this book as a literary it girl kind of read, I find that it matches this topic, this category that I created for this reading month, because it is very much centered on women's emotions, and it almost feels like a character-driven sort of work. So for this category, I found that it matched quite well. The next read was a romance. It was 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed this romance because I thought it would be a very much emotional romance. That's what I thought about literary it girl kind of romances. When I go to these sorts of influencers and booktubers for literary recommendations, I never see a contemporary romance, like a very normal illustrated covers muddy romance. I always see these very heartfelt, deep character-driven romances, and that's what I thought about this book especially with the cover. The cover really looks like a literary fiction book. But I was really surprised when I read this book that it is, in fact, the silly romance and the very emotional romance at the same time. This is a very perfect example of a book that manages to match these two tones so seamlessly. This book follows Eva. She is an erotica writer. She writes a paranormal romance series, and she meets up with her long lost first love, Shane, who is also a writer. He's a literary fiction writer, very well acclaimed. And it follows them reconnecting after a very long time. And it matches this very silly reconnection, second chance romance, and hijinks on the present timeline, and this very emotional, heavy driven romance on the flashbacks. So it was not like intermixed. These two things don't happen in the same plane, but it happens in the same book and with the same people. So it wasn't messy. It was very well constructed. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. And I think this is the type of romance that literary fiction girlies would really enjoy. And it could be a gateway for more lighter romances and the types of stuff that I particularly read. But it was also a fun endeavor for me as a normal romance girly, reading a very different kind of book and being surprised by a book that I judged on the cover. Then I read Penance by Eliza Clark. This is a writer that I've seen a lot on TikTok and on YouTube, but I have never given her a chance, even though I was very interested in some of her books. Not all of them, but some of them. This book is a mystery thriller that follows the case of Joan Wilson. She was a 16-year-old girl that was burned to death. And it follows the journalist who is interviewing and making the case a book about her. I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I was very surprised at how much I enjoyed it, because I thought that this book would be a very much a heavy literary thriller. I didn't think it would be page turning. I didn't think it would be very thriller-y, but it was, and I was really surprised about that. But then again, when I saw the reviews of the literary it girls that I follow and that I've seen engage with this book, I saw that most of them didn't really enjoy it. So that makes a lot of sense in my head, because as much as Eliza Clark is marketed as a very literary forward writer, I found that this book in particular was very much commercial fiction. I really enjoyed that aspect because I enjoy commercial fiction. I am not a literary it girl as much as I wanted it to be. This book, I found that it matched my taste, and it was like a one-off on the literary it girl journey. Then I read Black Swans by Eve Babbitt. This book is a collection of short stories by this writer that's very famous as well on the TikTok community mainly, which is where I really see this book and most of her books. And I gave it 3 stars because I have never read from this author before, and I don't think this book was a good gateway to her stories or her voice, because basically Eve Babbitt was a very famous person in LA and she had very famous friends, and this book retells some of her stories, her life stories. Living in LA, hanging out with these people, having romantic relationships and falling outs. And as someone that had never read from her before, didn't know who she was before, I don't think this was like interesting for me. It was probably interesting for fans of hers, and yeah, I don't think this was a good idea as a first book from her. But her voice is very interesting. I found that her writing was well done and very cohesive, and I enjoyed her voice, but I don't think I will continue reading on her works. It felt very literary it girl and something that someone who is interested in these people's kinds of lives would enjoy, and that's not me. And then my last book for this reading project for February was My Brilliant Friend by Helena Ferrante, and I hated this book. And this is the reason why my February reads were horrible, because this was the book that dragged the entire month of February. I could not finish it, and I didn't finish it. I think I quit at 70? No, earlier. No, I did. I quit this book at 76%, and some of my work friends were very confused as to why I hated it, but nothing happens. And this is what I find with literary fiction, is that I need plot. I need plot to move forward the story. I enjoy plot, and I find plot to be the most intrinsic part of a novel. And these character-driven, character studies are not for me if I'm not interested in the character. This book follows the friendship between Lila and Elena. At the start of the book, you have the information that one of them has passed away, and the other is reminiscing on their life and how they came to where they are right now. And I thought that this premise would keep me engaged throughout the book, but the main character's voice is very annoying. I don't find her interesting. I don't find their banter interesting. I don't find their story interesting. Nothing really happens. You just follow them as they grow older. As I said, I spent the entire month of February basically struggling with this book. I read the other books at the beginning of the month, and during Carnaval, I went to Curitiba with my family, and I brought this book as the only book to read because I needed to finish it. And even though it was the only thing I had to read, I never wanted to read it. And midway through the journey, I decided to read some Goodreads reviews and to see if I was the only person struggling with this book, and if it was me and not the book. And then I found one of the reviews, which is very well liked. It has 1,700 likes on Goodreads, that also gave it 1 star and also quit at the 70% mark. That the person said that nothing actually happens. I'm not missing out on anything by not finishing the book, because this is how it drags on. And apparently this is a trilogy. So you end the first book without actually knowing anything about what happened to this person or anything like that. And I was like, okay, so if I'm dragging on the first book, I'm not going to continue on in the series, and I don't feel inclined to know what happens to this person. I didn't even check for any spoilers because I really didn't enjoy it. I felt really bad because all of my friends have very high reviews for this book. I only have 3 people on Goodreads that gave this 3 stars, and that was the lowest rating for this book. So this is the book that reminded me of why I don't read literary fiction to begin with. When I started uni, I wanted to like these kinds of books. I wanted to read them, and I wanted to engage in them, and I wanted to be able to discuss and understand the connections and the references. But I've realized that I do not enjoy this type of literature, and I've realized that enjoying commercial fiction does not make me less of a literature student. It does not make me less of a publishing industry employee. It does not make me less of a reader if I don't enjoy these contents. And the next month was a proof of that. At the end of February, I got more arcs to read for work, and it was all commercial fiction, romance, romantasy, fantasy, YA. And I feel very happy that this is how the stars have aligned. As much as I felt frustrated and disappointed in myself for not being able to complete the February TBR that I had set up for myself, and to complete this challenge and to enjoy these books, I felt rewarded for doing what I actually love to do, which is read, and to read commercial fiction. And that's how I started the month of March. The month of March was basically a romance-heavy month for me. A lot of the work that I do right now involves reading romance, so I decided to read some of the things that were already on my TBR and to further improve my knowledge in what I actually enjoy reading in romance. Unfortunately, this month I didn't complete much on my TBR because I had a lot of work deadlines, so I only managed to complete 2 books. One of them was my work's book club pick, The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren. This is the second book in the DNA duology. I read the first book, I DNF'd it at 60%. I really disliked the characters and disliked their energy, and mainly disliked the pacing. I thought that it was super quick and that the couple got together really quickly. Something that I really enjoy in romance, and something that I've discovered about myself, is that I enjoy the pining. I enjoy the build-up. I enjoy getting to know their relationship, and I also enjoy to see a little bit of their relationship after it has formed, but I do not enjoy to spend the entirety of the book in the relationship. If you don't have as much angst and pining and getting to know each other at the beginning of the book, I fall off really quickly after that. And this is exactly what happened in the second book, which is why I don't think I'm going to continue reading on Christina Lauren's books. This book follows a romance author that hasn't had much romance in her real life and decides to join a reality TV where she can find her perfect soulmate, but she happens to fall in love instead with the producer, Connor. I enjoy the premise. I really wanted to see her fight the feelings of falling in love with Connor instead of the contestants on the TV show, but that's not what actually happens in the book. We barely see any of the contestants. The TV show is not really a part of the book, to be honest, in my opinion. It's mainly the build-up to becoming the TV show. They meet before filming the TV show. Connor is the one that pursues Fizzy to join the TV show to begin with, and they already have chemistry and feelings for each other before the show even starts. So, as I said, this is the problem that I have with Christina Lauren's books, is that the pacing is super off, in my opinion. I had some friends at the book club that really enjoy this aspect. They enjoy seeing the relationship much more than they enjoy seeing them get together. So if that's something that you enjoy in romance, I think you will really like this book, because in fact, most of the book is spent in their relationship and fighting the feelings that they have for each other, but that they have already said to each other that they enjoy each other. I don't know. This book basically follows their relationship and the struggles and the things that they have to work through to get to the end. But yeah, if you enjoy much more of the angst and the build-up and the pining, I don't think you will enjoy this book, just like I didn't. I gave this 3 stars because it was an average. I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it, and I don't think I will continue reading on with Christina Lauren. The next book that I read was One Italian Summer by Rebecca Searle. I am reading this book in anticipation for her next release, which is Expiration Dates, and I'm really excited about the book. I think I'm gonna really enjoy it. I gave this book 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed it, but I don't think this is a romance, and I don't think Rebecca Searle is a romance writer. I think this is women's fiction, and if you go into it with this in mind, I think you will really enjoy it. I talked to a few people online about this book and about Rebecca Searle in general, and I think this is sort of the consensus, that she writes more women's fiction instead of romance. And if you go into her books expecting a heavy romance, expecting to fall in love with the people in the book, I don't think you will really like that. This book follows Katie, and her mother Carol passes away at the beginning of the book, and you follow her go through with this vacation that they had planned together to Italy, and there she meets her mom again. So it has this magical realism aspect, which I think is very integral to Rebecca Searle's writing in general, but it also has this aspect of dealing with grief, understanding what it means to love your mom, and how your mom is also a real person, a real human being with feelings and thoughts and desires. And I think this is the part that touched me the most. And this is why I gave this book 4 stars, even though I understand that it is not a romance, and I understand that if you go into it wanting romance, you're not going to find it and you're going to be disappointed. But because I went into it without knowing much, only knowing how Rebecca Searle writes, I feel very completed in my journey. Like, I really enjoyed this book, and I think it was a very good experiment in my romance era to read more of these women's fictions sort of books. One thing that I thought is that if you dislike Happy Place by Emily Henry, her latest novel, I don't think you will enjoy One Italian Summer, because I think those two have very much the same vibe throughout the book. It is not a happy book. As much as the cover makes it seem, and in case of Emily Henry's, the name makes it seem, it's not a happy time. You're not following happy people, you're not following happy couples, and in fact, in One Italian Summer, you're barely following a couple. So if you didn't enjoy Emily Henry's One Happy Place, if you didn't enjoy Emily Henry's Happy Place, I don't think you will enjoy this, but if you did, I think you might like this one. And then I ended up having to read YA fantasy, which was completely off the cards on my March TBR, but that's what happens. And it was A Tempest of Sea by Hafsa Faizal. I think I pronounced it right. This is a YA fantasy that follows a girl named Arthi in her tea room named Spindrift, which turns into a blood house for vampires at night. And I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. I really recommend it. I highly recommend it. I see that it is a recent release. It was released back in February, and a lot of my friends have already read them or have them on their TBR. And I am pushing everybody to read this book. After I finished it, I went straight to Tumblr looking for fan art and straight to YouTube looking for people talking about this book. If you want that feeling of falling in love with the series and falling in love with characters like you felt maybe in Six of Crows, or maybe during your teenage years with Mortal Instruments and all of that stuff, I think you will really enjoy this. I find that it is very YA, so if that's something that you are struggling with as an adult reader, I don't think you will really enjoy this because it feels very young. Not only are the characters young, but the voice of the characters is also young. So if you don't enjoy reading YA as an adult, I don't recommend picking this one up. But if you do, I highly, highly recommend. This is a very sweet, family driven. It reminds you a lot of Six of Crows. I'm gonna warn you, it does remind you a lot of Six of Crows, not only because of the heist plot line, not only because of the found family aspect, but especially because of the characters. The characters really do remind you of Six of Crows characters, to the point where in the beginning I thought that it would hinder my enjoyment of this book, because I thought one of the characters really, really deeply reminded me of Jasper, which is my favorite character. So I was really worried. But if you push through, you end the book seeing that it stands up on its own. It does not follow through with any of the plot lines or the tropes. When I finished the book, I thought, oh, I can't even remember why I had the connection to begin with between Six of Crows and this book, because they don't remind each other of anything at the end. In the beginning, it does. It really feels like almost like a carbon copy, not gonna lie. And I see that a lot of the negative reviews have this critique in them. So if that is something that you're worried about, or if you started this book and thought of that, push through, because I promise you the ending is very much unique. And I'm really excited about reading the next one. And I think that this book accomplishes everything that it set out to be. And I have a feeling that this is the start of a very, very impressive fantasy world from this author. So yeah, I think these are all the books that I read for the month of February and March. Again, not very much. Again, really skipped out on my project for March, reading romance. I have some that I have started but haven't finished, so I don't want to talk about them yet. But hopefully in April, I'm gonna get back on track. I have a few romances that I need to finish, and then I also have some very interesting, darkish themes that I want to talk about. So yeah, I'm gonna see you guys next month with another project, and hopefully that one will be much more complete. So yeah, see you. Bye.